Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant John Solider. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, it is my privilege to welcome a long-term successful networker and entrepreneur, Mr. Robert Butwin, to the call today. How are you, Robert?
I'm absolutely amazing and never been more excited and focused as it relates to helping other people improve their life.
So let's start at the top. How did you get in the industry and how long have you been doing this?
1984 is when I got in. So a long time. I stopped counting the years because I love this profession as far as what it's all about. What originally attracted me is a little sister from a fraternity that I was with, 10, 15 years before, came to me and told me about this fraternity brother of mine that was making like 3 times more money in a month than I was making in a year. And that opened my eyes. Now, this particular company was doing a lot of stuff on satellite broadcasting, and they're showing how much money a lot of these people were making. And, that's what attracted me to it. But once I really understood this industry, I realized it's so much more than the money. Obviously you want to get rewarded for what you do, but you also want to have a meaning as it relates to what you do.
Wow, great. Well put. And you've been doing this, a long time now. You've had a lot of success, but let's talk about a hypothetical. And I ask just about everybody this. Here's the hypothetical. As you and I both know, and many of our listeners that are industry veterans know, and even some of the new people know, not everybody's a fan of our industry. They don't understand it. They look at it with jaded eyes. And up until pre-COVID, let's call it, the winter of 2020, there's some people living down the street from you. It's, let's say, a child who's now a man, 25-year-old man, and his 60-year-old dad. And the 25-year-old, he did everything right. He went to school, got good grades, worked hard, went to college, got out with a degree, got his first job, was doing well financially, was probably even looking to move out of mom and dad's house. And the dad, he was on the other end of the spectrum, right? He was saying, hey, I'm looking at, this fishing pole, this golf club and everything else, and I'm looking to stop working here in a couple of years. And then all of a sudden comes the winter of 2020 and everything changes. And by the way, that dad and his son, they looked at our industry with a jaded eye. They said, well, we know people do well in that, but that's not for us. That's not our type of thing. And all of a sudden, these couple of years have gone by. The economy has certainly shifted dramatically, not in most people's favors. And that dad and his son today say, hey, you know what? Robert down the street, he's been involved in that industry since 1984. Let's go down and knock on his door, and if he'll allow us to tell us why today we should consider network marketing as a viable option. What would you say to the 25-year-old? What would you say to the 60-year-old?
Well, first of all, that's a really in-depth question. And before I go there, I want to touch upon something beforehand about the success, and we've seen failures. Both you and I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly as far as what happens, because a lot of what we're dealing with is other people's perception as it relates to how they look at our profession. So, you mentioned about this couple's got this jaded perception. So now we're looking at somebody that's coming to take a look at it, and you want me to share with, first of all, the 25-year-old, that was how I started. It was the career path, trading time for money. And I came to the realization that there's something more than just trading time for money, that's going to only get you so far in life. It's always nice to have multiple streams of income. First of all, based on the tax benefits, as you're making a lot of money, you can take advantage of the tax benefits that go along with making a lot of money. As far as the person that's up there in age, because I'll be 71 in May, to me, this is about creating a legacy. Understanding as it relates to now, as you're looking at finishing out your life, how can you really live a life of more meaning? I mean, MLM has really changed. I love Doris Wood's acronym of MLM, which is making life meaningful. So that's really what it's about. And based on social media and technology, it's like 60 years ago, my cousin wrote a song. Now, as I talk about this, he's a very distant cousin. I never met him, but his mother was at my wedding, and his mother was at my wedding. The name of the song, The Answer, My Friend, is Blowing in the Wind. Well, it's gone from blowing into the wind up in the clouds. And all you have to do is ask Siri, Alexa, Google, or GPT chat to give you the information. Based on all the changes that have happened, and again, 2 years later, he wrote another song, and in the verse of that song was, "You better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. The times are changing, my friend." The bottom line is, with all the changes that have happened in the marketplace, my belief, there's never been a better time, as long as you understand the art of MLM. And the art is how you attract the right people as it relates. And there's many different ways to attract the right people based on social media, Zoom networking and calls. The R is how you retain those connections. And the T is taking them on a journey, taking them from where they are to where they want to be. And that's the beauty about what MLM really is. It's all based on a geometric progression. The numbers always work, people's don't. So you're really selling yourself, and the fact that you can help mentor them and helping them accomplish what they want to accomplish based on this business model.
Wow, great answer. I love that Doris Wood quote. Well, Robert, along the way, self-development, I'm sure, has been important to you, but how important? Who were some of your mentors? Who were some of the people who motivated you? Who were some of the people who guided you?
I loved Richard Brooks' analogy that really MLM is a self-development university disguised as a personal care product line company. So as far as self-development, that was what really started everything on my journey. I listened to Wayne Dyer's cassette tape series, No Limit Person. I came to the realization that the limits that existed, I was responsible for them being there. See, once you take responsibility for what is, you can take it for what will be. But most people are in a state of denial. And the acronym of denial is don't even notice I am lying. They've lied to themselves because they've allowed them to settle based on how the system is set up. Meaning you got to go out and get a good education, get a good job, and work for somebody trading time for money. You're never going to get ahead that way. So anyhow, as far as self-development, that started myself on the path. I started listening to Michael Gerber, the E-Myth, and I listened to him saying 4 to 5 businesses are going to fail in the first 5 years. And then he said, of the 20% that make it to 5 years, 4 to 5 are going to fail in the next 5 years. I'm listening to my self-talk. I'm saying, that's not me. Failure was not an option when I started this business. Now, I wasn't an overnight success. It took me something to figure out how to be successful. Then I came across Jim Rohn, Take Charge of Your Life. And there's so much wisdom that I learned from the things I listened to, in Jim Rohn. And then you got Dr. Robert Anthony. I mean, my analogy is, and I want you to picture the fact that I've got a glass of Coca-Cola here and a pitcher of water here. And I start pouring the water into the Coca-Cola. And as the water continually displaces the dark color of the chocolate Coca-Cola, it becomes lighter and lighter. So the bottom line is self-development is extremely important. Then I came across my, first, real mentor, living mentor that I had a direct relationship with. There's an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. His name was Robert Nadiak, and he used to always tell me, you have to have the attitude of gratitude. Be grateful for where you are as you're going to where you deserve to be. Because in this profession, it logically seems so easy. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody it's easy. What I can tell you, it's worth it. That if you properly, plug into self-development and put forth the proper actions, that ultimately there's a high probability that you will create the success that you deserve.
I have not heard Robert Nadiak's name in a long time. I was a kid when I started in college. after our first company had a problem, I went to another company. He wrote a book called They Dared to Be Free with Dale Maloney. I think that was the
Oh,
title.
yes, he was part of it, but he was really more famous for Your Destiny, when your life, work and your life become one.
That's right. That's right. And I had a little blurb in that book that he wrote about me, and I was a kid, and wow, it's like, whew, it seems like yesterday, probably for both of us, 1984, 85, something like that, whatever year it was, a long time ago, many moons ago, right? As our Indian friends say. So great on self-development. Let's talk a little bit about some of your experiences, though. 40 years almost doing this. I'm sure you've had some incredible experiences, be they travel, be they people you've met, be they just, something that if you had to pick one out of probably many, and you said, hey, let me share that with the audience. And keep in mind, the audience sometimes is people who are fairly new to the industry. We have people that have been in, a couple of years, or they're young folks that maybe they've been in 4 or 5 years, but they're still, haven't had some of the experiences that you've had. What would be one of them that would really stand out? And if there's two, feel free.
Well, as you mentioned, the travel can be amazing, but with Zoom today, the only travel I plan to do for the most part in the future is with my wife as it relates to where she wants to go. United sent me a plaque telling me that I went through over 2 million miles with United. So let's take a look at the word experience, and I'll give you another Doris Wood quote because it's so relevant to the journey that people are going to have as it relates to this profession. She used to say, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. So we're going to have those experiences that happen to us that are going to validate we're on the right path. And we're also going to have the experiences that don't turn out the way we want them to. So you can either look at that as these things don't work, which unfortunately many people will look at it that way, or you can look at it as this is just a stepping stone to make sure that I create the success that I want based on what this business opportunity offers us. So again, I mentioned to you earlier, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. Unfortunately, because it's so easy to get involved in this profession, it attracts some of the wrong element, but it also attracts more of the right element. So it's how you look at it, the glass half empty, half full. Every experience, it's part of the wisdom. It's why you and I have got the gray hairs that we've got. We've had all these experiences. So
don't look too close, it's all turning gray. Not sure if that's been multi-level or my kids, though. I mean, I think it's been a combination.
It's a combination of both. I've got kids too.
So how about the current economy? We're living in some crazy times as we speak here. We're recording. This is our May 2nd show. We're recording near the end of March. Crazy stuff going on just this week in the banking industry, obviously. A lot of economic uncertainty. How do people operate and function best? Because, as we say, right, this is not your first rodeo. You've been through this before, 2008 with Lehman and back, during the coming out of the Carter years, the early years of the Reagan presidency, when the economy had, incredibly high interest rates. How does somebody look at it today and see opportunity versus decline so they go forward in a positive fashion to build their business, their legacy, their family's future versus getting in all the bad news?
With that, and I'm sure you're familiar with Clubhouse, right?
Mhm.
Every Thursday, I run a room under the brand Landy Big Whales. It's called How to Prosper in Questionable Times. So if you go on to Clubhouse, love to have you on stage as a guest. But in the meantime, how that relates to the economy, we have to control our own economy. Whatever's happening out there, one of my famous sayings a long time ago, a confused mind's natural state is immobility. The media is set up, and if you ever watch, and I know we start talking a little bit about sports, you watch some of these sports talk shows and some of these people that are the moderators, they're hired to take opposite points of view. So if you take a look at it, is it going to be a recession? Is it going to be inflation? I can't control any of that. You can't control any of that. The only thing that we can control is our actions as it relates to the things that we do. And that's why this profession is such a great profession. I've said on stage many times, if people really understood this profession, everybody would be involved in it. They're not. The key things that we do in this profession is we educate and we influence. If I've done a proper job of educating you on why the company that I work with, the products that I work for are life-changing products, the influencing process is easy. Because again, my belief is if people understood this profession, everybody be involved. Not everybody's involved. So obviously we've got a significant job to help people become more clear. A friend of mine used to say, my crystal ball's clear. It's not crystal clear. It's helping people get clarity and helping them get into doing the proper action as it relates to this business.
Wow, great answer. And because you hear people, are so concerned about this and that, and to your point, what are you gonna do about it? I mean, you can't get bank fails. Well, come on, that's beyond scope and magnitude of us as distributors and industry, and what we have to take to the marketplace is our good attitude every day, because that's what's going to attract people.
A 70-year friend of my mom's, Harvey McKay, and he wrote multiple different books. One of them was Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. Now, I would tell everybody, don't stop digging until you hit gold or water. Because if you continually dig, and unfortunately somebody poisoned my well, and that's a whole nother story. I don't want to, you never, don't look at life happening to you. It happens for you. It's made you a better person based on whatever's happening to you or for you. So again, if you can, we've all heard the cliche, your net worth is in direct relationship to the value of your network. So if you continually focus on doing the right activities, which is number one, expanding your network and being of value to your network, everything else works itself out into out the way it's supposed to.
And along those lines, let's talk a little bit about the changes that you've seen over the years, right? 1984, cassette tapes, right? You'd fill out an application, you'd put it in a mailbox, mail it to a company, hope that they got it, hope that they didn't lose it, that the postman didn't lose it, et cetera, right? That's how, you and I and a lot of our colleagues started way back. And today, of course, take a phone and press a button and, guys in the business, right? But some of the other things, some of the technologies that you've seen, and what excites you about some of these newer technologies, because you referenced it earlier a little bit. It's important people understand how invaluable it is, and how much guys like us appreciate these technologies, because we don't have to leave home as much as we once did.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned cassette tapes, because I don't know if you know the story or not, but I was instrumental in over 65 million cassette tapes going into the marketplace in the early 90s. So there's stories behind that. We're not going to get into that, but we're talking about changes as it relates to what's going on Zoom. I've compiled a list of like 55 different Zoom networking events that are going on. There's an old saying by Gary Halbert. He said, if you want to catch fish, go where the hungry fish are feeding. So, but the key is having the right bait, being able to hook them, get them into the boat, because your net is working when you're networking. So that's one aspect of how it's changed. But the other part, because again, it goes back to the fact that the key in relationship to what we do is educate and influence. So it's a lot easier to educate people because you've got a lot of this information that is digitized. The other change that's happened based on a company that we talked about beforehand that you were involved with is it's now focused more on customer acquisition, and from that growing the people that want to build as a business. So, the FTC has obviously clamped down on different kinds of income claims and things that we can say, but the company has taken more responsibility and created more of the tools. And then you've got the back office, all that other kind of stuff. So that goes back to why I keep saying it's easier to become wealthy today in this profession than it ever has been, as long as you take the proper action.
Well, and along those lines also, these tools just keep getting better and better. I mean, did you ever think you'd be able to sit in your car, right? And, while the wife's shopping or, little league games going on with a grandkid, and be on a phone call with people around the world?
Yeah.
When we started, come on, that was like what was that show? The Jetsons, the Jetsons when they had the cars in the air and all of that when we were kids. So that comic strip, that's what it kind of reminds me of.
Well, you mentioned that, and I've alluded that many different times. First of all, if you remember the Jetsons, they had the talking TVs.
Yeah.
Number one, and then I can't remember the wife's name. Was it Dorothy or whatever? Came out to
something like that.
and she had a plate with one capsule on it, one capsule of products that was all the nutrition. That whoever was the writer of that show seems to be a futurist as it relates to the things going on today, because I know both you and I are involved with different nutritional companies, and I take a look at, what really is a need, and this goes back to the media one way or the other. And I remember watching 60 Minutes, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, and a guy from the food company came on and he said, my job is to make the foods addictive. Really, it's educating people on how they can age more gracefully and have a better probability of avoiding the health crisis that many people are going to attract because they eat too much of the wrong stuff.
Yeah, great point. Let me do a quick commercial here so my wife doesn't yell at me, and then we're going to come back to tools for a second because I got a question for you. So anyway, I got to do this or my wife yells at me. This is my advertising. So Leave Nothing to Chance is one of the books that we've written. And the show's called Leaving Nothing to Chance. Believe it or not, Robert, what happened there? Turns out that a big bank owns the Leave Nothing to Chance podcast. So I had to go with Leaving Nothing to Chance, but the book is called Leave Nothing to Chance. And I don't know how all this stuff works, and our prior book, Moving Up 2020, and they're available on Amazon and they're digital. And, we're really not out to sell books, folks, but you'll find that there's a lot of great people in these books, that their stories are in there. People like Robert that are industry veterans that have paved the way for some of your younger folks to get involved in our industry and take it to the next level above and beyond what we are. So let's go back to tools for a second, though, because we talk about cassette tapes, for example, right? I'm sure in your life, you mailed a lot of cassette tapes. I mailed a lot of cassette tapes, right? And, you had the problem of, will it get there in one piece? Number one. Right. You have a prospect and, you live in California and I live in New Jersey, you mail it across the country. By the time it gets there, wow, I was really excited to hear this, but it's broken. Mail me another one. It takes another week to get there. And by then I've decided to do something else. All of those things that we experienced, people today don't even have to mess with that. Right. Everything's press of a button. And I'll give you one really funny one. Love your reaction to this. So this is a cassette tape that I started my current company with in 1997. I went to the studio with a doctor, talked about the product, blah, blah, blah. And funny part is my son, who's now 19, he was in the garage cleaning up a couple of years ago, and he comes in and he says, Dad, what is this? So I went into, distributor mode, right? I start to pitch him on, this is the story about, he goes, I don't care about it. He goes, what is this, right? Physically, what is this? He'd never seen a cassette tape. And I had to explain to him, well, that's a CD today, or that's a DVD, or that's, whatever. And it was just so funny. But we've seen these tools that have come to life that, we had to struggle to build an organization in one country, perhaps the United States, right, where we both lived. And today it's like, you've got WhatsApp, you've got WeChat, you've got all of these other technologies where you can do, group calls, group texts to hundreds, if not thousands of people, and never leave your house to do it. And that is such an exciting time. I mean, I'm sure you do too, we could go back 40 years and have all this stuff when we began. But most importantly, here's the question. What do you do with all of that today? Because it's a little overwhelming too, because there's almost so much of it. What's your favorite go-to tools to communicate with your organization around the world?
The more that we can digitize everything, you mentioned cassette tapes, and as I alluded to earlier, I was responsible for over 65 million from a prospecting perspective. But before cassette tapes, going back to a company called United Science, was on videotapes, the VHS tapes. So, and that was not where you've talked to somebody. We did mass marketing. We bought lists and sent them out. So as far as what is more relevant today, and again, using technology number one, you can record simple messages, you can put them in sequences. So when somebody first, your first conversation to the next conversation, send them a short 2 to 3 minute video is one analogy. I mean, I've got a couple of others, system approaches as it relates to what I'm doing today. Because again, I'm out in the attracting stage, attracting and retaining, and the other part of art is taking them on a journey. My whole thing is figuring out how I can make sure that I am able to help a greater number of people that are attracted to our profession become successful. So to me, it's all about technology and systems. What are we doing to continually attract? Because leaders lead by example. The reason I consistently still staying in the game is to be more relevant as I can empathize and understand what other people are going through. So I'm looking at using technology to simplify the process, because again, it goes back to what I said earlier. The one constant in life is change, and so you've got to stay in the forefront. I mean, originally, as technology was really moving at a fast pace, I said to myself, how can anybody stay up with technology? So I never did. But when I started prospecting, I believe in outsourcing. I love the analogy in team. Together, everybody achieves miracles, not more. So it goes back to the book, The Big Leap. Staying in your state of genius, the things that you really like doing, and having team members around you to do the things that you could do them, but again, it's determining where you want to allocate the time, which is going to be your highest income producing activities.
Exactly. So let's segue. Let's have a little fun for a minute. We'll come back to multi-level in a second. So I can't ignore the backdrop behind you there of two of the greatest of the greats, Mr. Jordan and Mr. Russell. And tell us about your sports collection, because it's pretty vast from what I understand.
It is, and it started when I was, in the beginning stages of our profession. And my son was growing up, and he went to a sports place and he got a card, and the card was worth like $65, whatever back then. And so it was an activity that I could do with my son. He loved doing it. We still do it together. Everything that I collect is going to be handed down to, or the majority of what I collect is going to be handed down to him. One of the things that I didn't talk about is I'm very compulsive. And so in the early stages of sports card collecting, I had the opportunity to buy like 400 of Barry Sanders rookies and Emmitt Smith rookies, and I bought them. And so I'm selling a bunch of the excess there. I'm keeping the number ones. But part of my thinking was, if I surrounded myself with greatness through osmosis, it might rub off on me. But if nothing else, it anchors myself when I'm in this room, because I look up in front of me and you can see the sports cards behind me. I've got many of the Hall of Fame rookies, because again, they're going to continually go up and have continually go up in value. So I'm doing it as an investment because, I've come up with an acronym, and I don't remember if we talked about it or not, but CLAP, C-L-A-P, multiple streams of income, your coaching consulting business, your leveraged resource business, which MLM is a leveraged resource, your affiliate business, meaning that when you come across somebody that you vetted and that you can guide somebody to, that's got an affiliate link, because as we're networking, it's about creating a team of people around us. And your P is your passive income. And to me, passive income is your sports card memorabilia. If you're investing in gold and silver, real estate, stock market, whatever, it's like, back in the day when the stock market was 3,000, I invested a lot of money in it. Now I haven't taken it out, and we know where the stock market is today. It's over 30,000 last I looked. So again, it's something that I do for fun. I still buy sports card memorabilia. Someday it's all going to go to my son.
Wow. Well, let's talk about it a little further though, okay? Because Bill Russell is a guy that always to me stood out with such grace, not just as an athlete, obviously, his resume speaks for itself, but as a man.
Yes.
I mean, he was ahead of his time. He was playing in a city that was difficult to play in for an African-American when he played there in the 60s and early 70s. The guy did so much, and yet he always had, anytime he was interviewed, right up to his death, which was just about a year ago, I think he passed, right?
Yes. Less than a year ago.
And he had a tremendous way of communicating. Do you ever sometimes in a down moment look at Russell, look at Jordan, look at some of the athletes whose memorabilia you have there and say, what would Bill Russell have done, or what would MJ have done, or what would Gretzky have done, or whomever? Do you ever take lessons from those guys' leadership?
I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, I always take a look at some of these great, that's why I've got some of these people around. I mean, did you watch the documentary that just came out on Netflix about Bill Russell?
Yes.
Okay, great. I highly recommend it. But again, I sort of idolize Harvey McKay because, back in 1983, the Minnesota Gophers had a really, excuse my language, football team. I mean, they were 1 and I think 13 that particular year, and their opponents outscored them 2.5 to 1. And so through Harvey McKay's networking, he brought Lou Holtz in to coach the Minnesota Gophers. And within 2 years, they're in a bowl game, and shortly thereafter, he ended up going to Notre Dame and then back into the pros. But I see the power of networking. So I take a look at a person like, for example, Harvey McKay. On his 80th birthday, he invited 300 of his closest friends to his birthday party. He just turned 90. He did the same thing there. So I take a look at a great person, even though he's not an athlete. And I 100% agree with you about Bill Russell. I've also got the other people that you didn't mention that I've got their signed jerseys. I've got Wayne Gretzky, who I look up to, Yogi Berra. We all know about Yogi-isms, and Tom Brady, who just, I believe he retired. At this point, he's retired. We'll see about.
I think comes around July, he starts saying, "What am I going to be doing in September?"
Yeah,
he hasn't learned to fish or golf yet, I guess.
Yeah, but let's take a look at it as it relates to our profession and their profession. You take a look at technology, how that's changed. I think about, and one of the people, and unfortunately, the sports writers and other players sort of, I'm thinking of Barry Bonds and how technology, if you're studying the way how a pitcher throws and everything else like that. Yes, he used steroids and he lied about it. But before he used steroids, he still had over 400 stolen bases, 400 home runs. He had the numbers to be in the Hall of Fame before that. He was probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest hitters of all time. He got caught up in the year before with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa getting all the glory from the home runs. And so that's what started him on. Again, it's a wrong decision, whatever. But do I think about some of the things that happened as it relates to our profession? Yes.
Interesting. And the one thing I'll say, and believe me, I'm not defending steroids, but it's not going to make you see the ball any better.
No, exactly.
Like it doesn't help your eyesight. It helps your strength, it helps your recovery, but does not help your eyesight. And that's something I've had that argument not only about him, but about Roger Clemens, and for that matter, Mark McGwire. Now, Sosa, I don't think is a Hall of Famer. I don't think his numbers were there without the juice. But the other two guys, or the three guys, or two guys, Bonds and Clemens and
Palmeiro,
yeah.
Rafael Palmeiro. I mean,
Yeah.
he's only one of 5 guys that had 3,000 hits and over 500 home runs.
Yep, exactly. So it's a fair argument for all of those guys. And if they went in the Hall of Fame, if they really did the right thing, was there ever a guy played the game harder than Pete Rose?
But let's get down to it. Number one, at the time, it wasn't illegal in baseball,
Right.
But they lied. So they're being held accountable for lying, in essence.
Exactly. It's crazy. So let's come back to our business. So you're going to turn 71 here in a couple of short months. And Yep. What's ahead? What goals do you have going forward?
As I look at that, and even though I've had a very successful past, and a lot of it goes back to mindset, my mindset is my best is yet to come. How exactly it's going to happen, I don't know. I know that if I consistently show up doing the right things, that the right things will happen. So again, it's like, one of the guys I coach, he used to always say that we all have two B days, a birthday and a box day, and in between there's a dash. And I want to have a legacy that I lived a life of meaning based on helping other people. So to me, that's what it's all about. I believe that this profession is, without a doubt, I think Randy Gage used to say the last bastion of free enterprise, or somebody used to say that. But the reality is, it's a way for the average person that has a desire to change their circumstances. It's the best way that I know to do that, as long as you're willing to pay the price.
So, final question, I promise, because I could fire away questions at you all day with all of your experience, but let me ask you this. So, you've seen a lot of success. You've seen a lot of failure. You've seen both sides of it. If there were a couple of things that made that difference, right? Because we both have seen distributors that have gotten way up there, done incredibly well in their lives, put their money away, saved it for the future. Because we could probably do an entire podcast on financial mismanagement in this industry too, right? But let's talk about the people who made it. What was the difference, besides the obvious, that they didn't quit, they didn't give up when things got tough? Because as you and I know, this is not easy. What we do is not an easy profession by any stretch of imagination. It's a worthwhile profession because of the people that we bless with it, but it's not easy by any stretch of imagination, which makes me laugh sometimes when I hear bureaucrats talk about it. It's like, oh yeah, those people that get rich quick schemes. Yeah, okay, come on in. Let me show you how easy it's not, right? But let's talk about the ones that have made it. What do you think those differentials are versus the guy or the gal who had all the potential? And we've met them, the kind of guys, where you sit with them and you go, wow, they got their list ready to go, and they're eloquent speakers, and they're connected, they look good and they smell good, and 2 months later you go, what happened to that guy? Right? Versus the one that sticks it out and achieves and becomes legendary or icon, like yourself, for example, in the industry. Some of the other people you mentioned, Randy Gage and Larry Thompson and Dan McCormick and some of the other folks that I've interviewed, all icons, all guys who went through all the ups and downs. What do you think the difference is in the ones that really make it? And what advice would you give to the younger folks listening that are saying, hey, I really want to get where you've been, where some of those other guys have been? How to get there?
In my opinion, boils down to one word. They're congruent with what they say and what they do. They truly care about other people. We start talking about a particular person, without mentioning names, and I could name a few other people that, they're not congruent. They really don't care. You can tell they're only about me. It's me, and it's about them being up on stage. And that might get them there short term, but it's not going to keep them there. And sooner or later, they will be exposed. A famous saying that I remember once heard is, a person's character is like a tea bag. You never know what's inside of it until it gets into hot water. Those that don't have long-term success, and this goes back to Robert Nadiak. Robert Nadiak, when I first started in this profession, he used to write for a magazine called MLM News, and he did the feature article there called Portrait of a Winner. And he talked about, over approximately a 3-year period of time, he interviewed 36 different people. Of the 36 different people, I think approximately 50% of those people, their company had a challenge and things didn't go right. And of that approximate 50%, I don't remember the exact numbers, close to half of them were never able to duplicate their success because it was based on meeting one right person. So the person that's going to be around long term, because again, people today, I believe, are much more intuitive than they've ever been. And so if you're not congruent in what you say and what you do, sooner or later, you're going to reveal your weakness. I take a look at one of the guys I coached, and I watched him sabotage. He was on the top of the world. I watched him sabotage. Actually, this happened to 2 different people that I was working behind the scenes in coaching, and I watch them sabotage their success. So you've got to be congruent and consistent and continually do the right things. And ultimately, you will create the success that you deserve. And I believe everybody deserves success.
Wow. Well, it's a great message, Robert. It's a great place for us to kind of wrap up here. And any last thoughts? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you start in life or where you are now. The key is the direction you are headed and where you choose to end up. Life is about our choices. So if you choose to, become great, create great things in your life, it's taking the impossible and saying, I am possible. Everything's possible based on making the right choices along with the right actions.
Great. Well, Robert, this has been a privilege and an honor to get together and interview you, industry icon, great legacy that you've created, and still just getting started, right? We're just now we got it all figured out. Now we just want to keep doing it, and as long as we possibly can, right?
Do me a favor and send me the copy of this if you could.
Will do. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Soliter, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.